Namdi woke up to find that Amara was not in the house. At first, he thought she might be fetching water from the river, but when he went to the river, Amara was not there. Amara, Amara, where are you? He shouted. But unfortunately, Amara was nowhere to be found. Once upon a time, in the village of Unko, people knew each other very well. Unko was a small village with red dusty roads and tall palm trees. Everyone there loved to tell stories and sit under the moonlight. The houses were made of mud bricks and had thatched roofs. Children played in the open field, and the village was always filled with laughter. In this village lived a happy couple named Namdi and Amara. Namdi was a tall, strong man who worked as a fisherman. He was known for his kindness and his love for Amara, his wife. Amara was a beautiful woman with a warm smile. She helped the women in the village with cooking and cleaning. They were the perfect couple and everyone admired them. One morning, Namdi woke up to find that Amara was not in the house. At first, he thought she might be fetching water from the river, but when he went to the river, Amara was not there. He asked their neighbors, but no one had seen her. Namdi began to worry. The village gathered to help Namdi look for Amara. They searched everywhere. They searched every corner of Unko, but she was nowhere to be found. The children stopped playing and the women whispered among themselves. The men tried to comfort Namdi, but he could not stop worrying. Where could she be? Namdi wondered aloud. Amara would never leave without telling me. As the sun set and the star began to appear in the sky, Namdi sat outside his house, hoping Amara would come back. The village chief, Chief Okeke, came to see him. Namdi, we will find Amara, Chief Okeke said. The gods will guide us. Namdi nodded, but his heart was heavy. He loved Amara so much and he could not imagine life without her. As he looked at the dark sky, he prayed for her safe return. The village of Unko was no longer filled with laughter that night. Everyone went to bed with heavy hearts, wondering where Amara could have been. The next morning, the whole village of Unko woke up early. The men gathered their tools and set out to search for Amara again. They divided into groups and searched the forest, the farms, and even the nearby hills. The women stayed back, taking care of the children and preparing food for the search parties. Namdi joined a group of men led by his best friend, Chike. Chike was a brave and loyal friend who had always stood by Namdi. As they walked through the dense forest, Namdi couldn't help but think about Amara. He remembered her sweet smile, her gentle touch, and how she used to sing while she walked. Don't worry, Namdi, Chike said. We will find her. Namdi nodded, but he couldn't shake off the feeling of fear in his heart. The forest was thick and dark. They called out Amara's name, hoping she would hear them and respond. Hours passed, and the sun was high in the sky. The men grew tired and decided to rest by a small stream. They drank some water and ate the food they had brought along. Namdi sat on a rock, staring into the distance. Do you think something bad had happened to her? Namdi asked Chike. We don't know yet, Chike replied. But we must keep hope alive. Amara is strong. She will be alright. After the short break, the men continued their search. They climbed hills, crossed streams, and went deeper into the forest. But there was no sign of Amara. As the day ended, the men returned to the village, tired and disappointed. Back in Unko, the women gathered around Namdi, trying to comfort him. Chief Okeke called for a village meeting. Everyone gathered in the village square, sitting on wooden benches and mats. We have searched everywhere, but we have not found Amara, Chief Okeke said. Tomorrow, we will search again. We will not give up until we find her. The villagers nodded in agreement. They were determined to find Amara and bring her back to her husband. Namdi looked around at his friends and neighbors. He felt grateful for their support, but the fear in his heart remained. As night fell, Namdi went back to his house alone. He sat on the bed he shared with Amara and cried. He prayed to the gods to keep her safe and bring her back. The village of Unko was quiet, and the only sound was the whisper of the wind through the trees. The third day of the searching began with new hope. All the villagers gathered in the village square. A young boy named Obi ran up to Chief Okeke, panting out of breath. Chief, Chief, I found something, Obi shouted, holding a piece of cloth in his hand. Chief Okeke took the cloth and examined it. It was a piece of bright yellow fabric, the same color as the dress Amara was wearing the day she disappeared. Namdi rushed forward and grabbed the cloth. This is Amara's, Namdi exclaimed. Where did you find it, Obi? Obi pointed towards the forest. I found it near the old mango tree, close to the river, he said. Without wasting any time, the men of the village, led by Chief Okeke and Namdi, headed towards the old mango tree. The women and children stayed back, praying for their safe return. As they approached the mango tree, they saw signs of a struggle. The grass was flattened, and there were footprints in the mud. Namdi's heart pondered in his chest. He was both hopeful and scared. They followed the footprints, which led them deeper into the forest. The path was difficult, with thorny bushes and low-hanging branches, but the men pressed on, determined to find Amara at all costs. After walking for some time, they got to a spot. In the middle of where they stood was a small abandoned hut. Namdi's heart raced as they approached the hut. Could Amara be inside? Chief Okeke signaled for the men to be quiet. They surrounded the hut, and Namdi, Chike, and Chief Okeke went to the door. With a deep breath, Namdi pushed the door. Inside the hut, it was dark and musty. The only light came from a small window. Namdi called out, Amara, are you there? There was no response. The men searched the hut, but it was empty. Namdi's hope began to fade again. Just then, Chike found something on the floor. It was a small bracelet, one that Namdi had given to Amara on their wedding day. Namdi picked it up and held it close to his heart. She was there, Namdi said, but where is she now? Chief Okeke put a hand on Namdi's shoulder. We will find her, Namdi. This is a sign we are getting close. With a renewed determination, the men left the hut and continued their search. The forest was quiet, and the only sound were their footsteps and the chirping of birds. Namdi held the bracelet tightly, praying for Amara's safety. As the sun began to set, they decided to return to the village. They would come back the next day with more men and search further. Namdi looked back at the hut one last time before leaving. He knew they were on the right path, and he would not give up until he found Amara. The next morning, the village was buzzing with activity. The news of Amara's item found in the forest spread quickly, and everyone was eager to help with the search. As the men prepared to leave, a stranger arrived in the village. The stranger was a tall, slender man with a serious look on his face. He wore a long robe and carried a staff. The villagers gathered around, curious about the new arrival. My name is Ade, the stranger said. I am a traveler, and I have heard about the missing woman. I wish to help. Chief Okeke welcomed Ade and explained everything that had happened. Namdi was skeptical at first, but he was willing to accept any help to find Amara. Ade listened carefully and then said, I have knowledge of tracking and the ways of the forest. I believe I can help you find her. With Ade leading the way, the men set off into the forest again. Ade moved quickly and confidently. his eyes scanning the ground and the trees. Nnamdi followed closely, holding onto the bracelet he found in the hall. As they walked, Ade asked Nnamdi about Amara. Nnamdi told him about her kindness, her beauty, and how much he loved her. Ade listened quietly and nodded. After some time, they reached a clearing with the abandoned hut. Ade examined the footprints and the signs of struggle. He pointed to a trail that led further into the forest. "We must follow this path," Ade said. "I sense we are getting closer." The men continued to follow Ade. The forest grew thicker and the path became more difficult. They had to climb over fallen trees and wade through streams, but Ade never lost his way. As they walked, Nnamdi felt a glimmer of hope. Ade seemed to know what he was doing, and Nnamdi prayed that he was right. After hours of walking, they came upon another clearing. This time, there were signs of a campfire and more footprints. Ade knelt down and examined the ground. "She was here recently," Ade said. "We are close." Nnamdi's heart raced. He looked around, hoping to see Amara, but the clearing was empty. Ade stood up and pointed to a path leading up a hill. "We must go this way," Ade said. The men following Ade up the hill. The climb was difficult and exhausting, but Nnamdi pushed on, driven by his love for Amara. As they reached the top of the hill, they saw a small cave in the distance. Ade stopped and turned to Nnamdi. "This is it. She is inside." Nnamdi's heart pondered. As they approached the cave, he called out, "Amara, are you there?" There was a faint sound from inside the cave. Nnamdi rushed in, followed by Ade and the other men. Inside, they found Amara, weak but alive. She looked up and saw Nnamdi, and her eyes filled with tears. "Nnamdi," she whispered. Nnamdi rushed to her side and held her close. "Amara, I found you. I will never let you go again." The men cheered, and Nnamdi thanked Ade for his help. They carried Amara back to the village, where she was welcomed with open arms. The village of Nkwo was filled with joy and laughter once again. As the days went by, Amara regained her strength, and Nnamdi never left her side. The villagers praised Ade for his help, and he became a beloved member of their community. Nnamdi and Amara's love grew stronger, and they were grateful for the support of their village. They knew that no matter what had happened, they would always have each other and the strength of their community to guide them through the way. After returning to the village, Amara needed time to rest and recover. The women of Nkwo took turns caring for her, bringing her food and keeping her company. Nnamdi stayed by her side, holding her hands and offering support. One evening, as the sun set and the village grew quiet, Amara felt ready to tell her story. The villagers gathered around, sitting on mats and benches, eager to hear what had happened. Amara began. "On the morning I disappeared, I went to fetch water from the river. As I walked back to the village, I heard a noise behind me. Before I could turn around, someone grabbed me and covered my mouth. I tried to scream, but they were too strong." The villagers listened intently, their faces filled with concern. Nnamdi held Amara's hand tightly, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "They took me deep into the forest," Amara continued. "I was scared and didn't know what they wanted. They kept me in a small hut, tied up and unable to move. I could hear them talking, but I didn't understand what they were saying." Amara paused, her eyes filled with tears. The women of the village comforted her, encouraging her to continue. "One night, I managed to free my hands," Amara said. "I waited until the men were asleep, and then I escaped. I ran as fast as I could, not knowing where I was going. I found a small cave and hid there. hoping they wouldn't find me. The villagers gasped, amazed by Amara's bravery. Chief Okeke stepped forward and said, "You are very brave, Amara. We are grateful that you are safe." Amara smiled weakly and continued, "I stayed in the cave for a few days, too scared to come out. I had no food or water, and I was very weak. I prayed that someone would find me, and then I heard Nnamdi's voice. I was so happy to be found." Nnamdi hugged Amara, his heart full of love and relief. The villagers cheered and praised Amara for her courage. "We must find those men and bring them to justice," Chief Okeke said. "We cannot let them harm anyone else." The men of the village agreed, and they vowed to protect their loved ones from harm. They thanked Ade for his help and asked him to stay and teach them more about tracking and survival. As the day passed, life in Nkwo returned to normal. The children played in the fields, and the women cooked and cleaned, and the men worked hard to provide for their families. Amara and Nnamdi's love grew stronger, and they were grateful for the support of their village. Amara's recovery took time, and the village of Nkwo stood by her every step of the way. She was still weak and often had nightmares about her ordeal. Nnamdi stayed close, offering her comfort and support. One sunny morning, Amara decided to take a walk around the village. Nnamdi walked beside her, holding her hand. As they walked, the villagers greeted them warmly. Children ran up to Amara, giving her flowers and hugs. "Thank you, children," Amara said with a smile. "You make me feel so loved." Amara and Nnamdi reached the village square, where they sat on a bench under a big mango tree. The tree provided cool shade, and the breeze was gentle. Amara took a deep breath and feeling a little stronger every day. "Nnamdi, I want to thank everyone for their support," Amara said. "I want to show them how much I appreciate their kindness." Nnamdi nodded. "We can hold a feast to celebrate your return and thank the villagers. It will be a joyous occasion for everyone." Amara smiled and agreed. They began to plan the feast, and soon the whole village was involved. The women prepared delicious meals, the men set up tables and chairs, and the children decorated the village square with colorful ribbons and flowers. On the day of the feast, the village was filled with laughter and music. People danced and sang, celebrating Amara's return. Amara and Nnamdi stood in front of everyone, expressing their gratitude. "Thank you all for your love and support," Amara said. "I am so grateful to be part of this wonderful village. Your kindness has helped me heal, and I will never forget it." Chief Okeke stepped forward and said, "We are all family in Nkwo. We take care of each other, and we are stronger together. Let us always stand united." As the weeks passed, Amara grew stronger. She began to help with the daily chores again, and her laughter returned. Nnamdi was happy to see his wife healing, and their love grew even deeper. One day, Amara and Nnamdi decided to visit the river where she had been taken. They wanted to face their fears together and find closure. As they stood by the river, holding hands, Nnamdi kissed Amara on her forehead. "I will always protect you, Amara. We will face every challenge together." Life in Nkwo village returned to its peaceful state. Amara was fully recovered, and the bond between her and Nnamdi grew stronger each day. The villagers went about their daily activities feeling safe and content.